Welcome back to The Messy Truth. I'm Van Jones. Here's the messy truth. You know, I hate to defend Donald Trump in any way for any reason. Y'all know I'm a strong Democrat, but I'm going to defend him tonight. We have had some salacious, unverified allegations against Trump. Now, I don't know if any of this stuff is true, and neither do you. But here's what I do know. Russia is deliberately trying to sow dissent and chaos to undermine American democracy. How do you know that? Because every American intelligence agency is telling you that. Remember WikiLeaks and the Democrats? Okay, everybody who jumped on social media and amplified that, you might have thought you were hurting Hillary Clinton, but it turns out you were mainly just helping Russia. Now, the shoe's on the other foot. And so now you see other people trying to amplify those rumors that have come out recently thinking they're going to hurt Donald Trump. But in fact, you are mainly helping Russia. And Putin does not deserve your help or your support. So please do not jump up and down on this new pogo stick they put out there for you. America, please just wake up. They are playing us for suckers. They are tricking us and using us against each other. And you think it's funny to retweet this stuff? The only people who are really laughing are the people in the Kremlin. That's who's laughing. And you don't want America's enemies laughing at us. So there. I got that out the way. I had to say it. And now I want you to recognize and welcome and give a warm round of applause to a superstar from the Republican Party, former presidential candidate Carly Fiorina is in the house. She's coming to the stage. Coming to the stage.
How are you, man?
Thank you.
Good
it
to
is
see
an
you.
honor. Please grab a seat.
Thank you.
Now listen, the audience has a ton of questions for you, but I got a question for you first.
Well, of course you do.
You know,
good to see you, by the way.
Good to see you, too. We've been together for a long time. Look, you saw me. I stood up for the guy. I stood up for the president. I said, let's stop all this nonsense. But don't you think that he does himself some harm by creating an atmosphere where we haven't seen his tax returns? We really don't know if he has interest over there. Wouldn't you advise him at this point to go ahead and get the tax returns out there so everybody can have more trust and confidence?
Well, certainly, I said during the presidential campaign season that I thought all candidates ought to release their tax returns. I released mine. On the other hand, I think it's important to remember that he got elected anyway. And so I actually think a whole bunch of people who knew very well that he had a complex business empire, who knew very well that he hadn't released his tax returns, were willing to vote for him anyway. And I think they were willing to vote for him because they wanted change.
Yeah, and they like what he brings to the table, but he's already got those people. But for the other people, I just think at some point I would love to see him do it. But you know what? I don't want. There's so many people out here that got questions for you. I want to bring to the microphone. She's already waiting for us. A doctor. Her name is Emmeline Avicki, and she is a Democrat from New York. She's got a question for you.
Hi.
Hello, doctor.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Wonderful. So my question is simple. We've been hearing so much in the news about Russia's interference in the past election. Regardless of what's verified or not, is it really in our country's best interest to have a president-elect and his cabinet picks have close ties with Russian leaders?
Well, first, it depends what you define as close, but let's just be clear. We have known for some time that Russia, as well as China, as well as North Korea, have had a stated interest in hacking our nation, our government entities, our commercial entities. I served as the chairman of the advisory board at the Central Intelligence Agency, and so I've seen the evidence, and that's way back almost 8 or 10 years now. So yes, of course they're hacking us. Yes, of course they are our enemies. Look, Russia is a big country, and a lot of people do business in Russia. As the CEO of Hewlett-Packard, I did business in Russia. That doesn't mean I don't understand that Russia is an adversary, and they are an increasingly dangerous adversary, and we better be clear about that. And so I actually applaud the president-elect for saying, among other things, that in the next 90 days he's going to direct his team to come up with a cybersecurity program to try and keep our nation safe, because the last time we had a cybersecurity strategy was 5 years ago, and in the technology world, 5 years is 5 generations, and we are way behind.
Nobody knows that better than you, Carly, given your role in the whole Silicon Valley technology world. But you know, you just mentioned something about the need for us to be safer. What do you think about President Trump, blasting often our intelligence agencies? You've actually served on committees. You know the importance. You know how hard those people work. Do you worry when you see a president-elect doing that kind of stuff?
Well, I think Clapper, the outgoing head of DNI, said it very well. It's one thing to be skeptical and to question. Because the thing is about intelligence, if you read an intelligence report, there is lots of conflicting evidence. And frequently, the summary to an intelligence report, the thing that drives headlines, has been written by committee, and it's filled with agendas, some of which are political. And so you actually have to get into the details of the report. So when Clapper said skepticism is one thing, disparagement is another, I agree with him. And I think when it's bordering on disparagement, that is not healthy and not helpful.
Well, we've got another person who I think has something important to ask. Cherie Corso. Cherie Corso. Now, Cherie Corso is one of the big Trump supporters. She worked hard to elect him, and she's got a question for you.
Hi, Carly.
Hi, Cherie.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Donald Trump is a world-class businessman. Why are his successes as a business person being treated so negatively? We should be honored to have him run this country and get things back on track.
Well, treated negatively by whom? I think, remember, if you set aside New York and California, which are obviously huge and populous states, they're also reliably blue states. If
Why
you
are
set
his business conflicts
yes,
being treated so negatively?
Well, if you set those states aside, Donald Trump won 3 million more votes than Hillary Clinton. He won. No. It's important to say. Because the reason that's important to point out is because New York and California are not necessarily represented. No, it's not ridiculous.
We're all Americans.
Yes, we are. Yes,
you're
we
a
are.
Californian. You want
Yes,
to be
we
governor
are.
of California.
No, actually Senate. And
whatever.
I moved home to Virginia. But my point is this, to try and answer your question. The reason a Donald Trump wins a Michigan or a Pennsylvania or a Wisconsin or maybe more traditionally a Georgia or an Alabama or a North Carolina or a Florida is because the Americans who voted for him actually believe that his business accomplishments are relevant.
Right, and
that's why they voted for him.
Cabinet. Do you like his cabinet?
Yes, I think his cabinet is filled with some very interesting picks. Some of them are politicians, some of them are business people. Here's the thing, having been in business and politics,
it's a
they're different,
that we have
but there's a lot that's
us.
relevant from business to apply to politics.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for your question, and I think it's actually important to have you here because you've been in both. I actually believe, I'm going to surprise you, I actually believe that we should have more people with a business background and other backgrounds in our government. I just think it just makes for a more rich conversation and better decision making. But I think you would have to admit that it's a sticky pickle. And you can wind up with all kind of conflicts of interest or the appearance thereof. Don't you have to meet a higher standard if you're going to jump that wall? And it seems to me that when you've got people going through hearings and we haven't even seen all the paperwork, doesn't that worry you? Don't you think that might make people feel less confident in the good parts if they're worried about the bad parts?
You know, I think there are politicians on both sides of the aisle who have tremendous conflicts of interest, with lobbyists, with special interest groups, with a whole set of things. And in fact, here's a statistic that might surprise you. Gallup has been polling Americans about sort of big questions for a long time. 80% of the American people believe the federal government has grown incompetent, corrupt, and allows problems to fester, and 80% of the American people also believe that we have a professional political class of both parties that cares more about its own power, prestige, and privilege and on getting the people's work done. My point is this. The vast majority of Americans, Democrats, independents, young, old, Republicans, men, women, believe that politics itself is corrupt. So they don't believe business is necessarily more corrupt than politics.
In my party, we had 47% of people vote for Bernie Sanders because they feel the same way. Nobody's arguing that point. What they're saying is, if you want to be the Mr. Fixer-Upper, if you're going to come in and clean it up, and you're going to bring in some transparency. Shouldn't you have some transparency? Shouldn't you actually do what you're saying? I just think you're going to have a problem. I think your party's going to have a problem if you have a bunch of hearings and you're voting on people and you don't know what's in their closet. How is that good government? How is that better?
Well,
how is that draining the swamp?
As the cabinet confirmation process is going on, every single one of the people up for confirmation has provided all of the information they've been asked for, including their tax return. It's an exhaustive process for cabinet officials. President-elect Trump has taken a different standard than his cabinet officers have, but those who are being elected or nominated to cabinet positions have turned in vast amounts of information.
Well, there's still some that people want more information from, but I got to let other people talk. We can go back and forth. We love doing this. But I now want to hear from Nermeen Arestu. She is an immigration attorney with an important question.
Hi there.
Hi.
So you've endorsed Senator Sessions for AG, calling him a principled leader, right? Mm-hmm. But Senator Sessions has been one of the harshest critics of our immigration system, upon which our very success as a nation was built. He has sought to criminalize undocumented persons. He has called immigrants, blamed them inaccurately for taking American jobs. He has sought to lessen protections for immigrant victims of crime. As an immigration attorney, I have seen firsthand how his rhetoric and how his policies have traumatized families and communities. Now, I ask you, what in his immigration track record do you see, and why did you endorse him? And on top of that, what advice do you have for him if he is to become our AG? How would you like to see him treat immigrant communities?
Yeah. Well, first let me say you are correct, of course, and I agree with you fully when you say immigration is a source of great success and vibrancy in this country and economic growth. That's clearly true. It is also true that our immigration system is broken. It's broken in so many ways. For example, we have 16 different visa programs in this country. Half of the people who are here illegally now just overstayed a visa. We actually don't know when people come in and when they leave. That's a broken system. It's an inefficient system. I spent 12 years in the state of California. Agriculture can't bring enough farm workers in. That's a broken immigration system.
Yeah.
So there are many aspects about our immigration system that are broken. And of course, most Americans want the borders secured.
But how does that, fixing all that good stuff, which I think we should fix, relate to scaring the bejeebers out of millions of people? You got dreamers that turned in their names thinking they're going to be able to stay here. Now they can't sleep at night. There's a difference between all the smart stuff you're saying and some of the scaremongering. Aren't you concerned about the scaremongering?
Of course I'm concerned about the scaremongering. And I think scaremongering on both sides is harmful to our democracy. One of the things that I hope very much is that we as citizens, because we can't throw it all on our elected officials' laps, I hope that we as citizens can learn to be more respectful of one another, that we can tone down the hyperbole. But let us be honest, the habit of tarring one's political opponents with a lot of adjectives and insults didn't start with Donald Trump. He may do it differently. He may tweet about it, and let's face it, 140 characters means you got a lot of hyperbole and a lot of adjectives in there. Well, but he is not the first person to insult a political opponent. I have to say that I understand that you don't agree with Jeff Sessions, some of his policy positions. That's your right as a citizen. I understand that Cory Booker doesn't agree with Jeff Sessions. That's his right. But it's a very different thing for Cory Booker to say he's unqualified. He's clearly qualified. He's overseen the Judiciary Committee. He's been an Attorney General. He's worked in the Justice Department. He's qualified.
Okay, thank you very much. But I got to pay my bills. Listen, Carly, now we're going to get it on when we get back, because you done messed with Cory Booker. So please stick around when we come back. More questions from the audience and now from me, too. And also, we'll see you when we get back. Thank you.